Hello and ciao there, olive oil lovers. Welcome to another episode of Zucchi Recipes. My name is Sarah, and today we're going to be making an olive oil pumpkin pie. So pumpkin pie is the quintessential Thanksgiving dessert. And today, instead of using butter for the crust, we're going to be using extra virgin olive oil, which really makes this dessert just a little bit lighter and gives it a slightly different flavor than traditional pumpkin pie. Okay, so we're going to start by making the crust. And for the ingredients for the crust I'm using about 2 cups of all-purpose flour, about a teaspoon of dried rosemary. Then we also have walnut meal, which I just took about 4 ounces of walnuts and blitzed them in a food processor until you get this mealy texture. We have, of course, the olive oil, and I'm using Zucchi's organic extra virgin olive oil, which is really my favorite to bake with because it has a much milder intensity than our other extra virgin olive oils. So it's a good one for desserts. And then we have a little bit of salt and about half a cup of cold water. So to start, I'm gonna add my flour to a bowl, adding in walnut meal, a little bit of salt. So important to not forget to add salt when you're baking, because salt is what brings out the flavor of all the other ingredients. Even though this isn't necessarily a savory dish, we still want to be able to taste it. And then adding in the rosemary as well. And I'm going to start by mixing up all of the dry ingredients first. And the cool thing about making an olive oil crust like we are here is that you don't need to let it rest in the fridge or cool off. We can go straight to the baking part. So I'm going to first start by drizzling in the extra virgin olive oil, and I have about 1/4 cup here. And then we will also add in the cold water, and I'm gonna start very, very little, with a small amount first, and then add in more as needed. So we just want to add enough to where the crust is just coming together. This is a fantastic crust to also use for savory tarts or pies as well. Okay, so as soon as it starts to clump together, what I like to do is dump everything out onto a clean work surface. So if you have a clean countertop or a wooden pastry board like we're using here, you can do that. And this is where we're going to start to use our hands. So again, I haven't added in all of the water yet because I really want to kind of feel out the dough and see how it feels as I work with it. So I'm going to add just a little bit more and then just mix it together with my hands. And the idea is that we don't want to like knead the tart dough. We just want to mix it up until it starts to form a ball. Okay, so it still needs a little bit of more water. And this is really where you have to use your judgment because different things will affect how moist your dough is, from the air in the room, the temperature outside, how humid it is that day. So the recipe is a good guideline, but it's also important to feel it. Okay, I would say that is pretty good. So you can see here that it's not perfectly kneaded into this perfect ball, but rather it's just sort of sticking together. Okay, so before we roll out the dough, I'm going to grease, I have a springform tart pan here. You could also just use a regular tart pan. And we're gonna add just a little bit of extra virgin olive oil on the bottom to keep the crust from sticking. I'm just gonna rub this around on all the sides, and it's very, very, very lightly oiled because there's olive oil in the crust. So, okay, once you do that, we can set this aside. Take a little bit of flour and sprinkle it on our surface so that the dough doesn't stick when we're rolling it out. And I also like to just sprinkle a little bit onto the rolling pin too. Okay, so the trick to rolling out the dough is that we want to keep it as close to a perfect circle as possible. And so when you're doing that, you're going to want to start from the middle and roll outwards. And then we're going to turn our dough about 1/4 of the way and do the same thing. And we just keep going around. I love the way that the rosemary and the walnuts are sort of speckled throughout the dough. You can really see that there are different textures in the dough. And so depending upon the size of your tart pan, you may roll this out thinner or thicker or wider. Okay, we're almost there. I think just a few more turns. And you can always check to make sure that you roll it up enough. You're just putting your pan on top and seeing if you have some room around the edges as well to cover the edges of the pan. And we're going to just wrap the crust gently around the rolling pin and use this as our means of transportation. Okay, just like that. And then you just want to gently roll it back out again. And then from here, you can sort of just gently maneuver it around as needed. So we're going to trim the edges because this is a little bit larger than our tart pan. We can save the trimmings either as a decoration on top, or you can just bake them and eat them as little snacks. And use your fingertips to just press, and then we're going to trim the edges. And my tart pan has sort of these 10 edges, so it's easy to trim by just pressing it down, but you could also use a knife or one of those like fluted pastry wheels to get a really pretty edge on your pie. Okay, and then we can just pull all of this off. So now it's time to bake our crust, and then we will add the filling on top after that. So before you bake it, it's important to just prick the crust with a fork, just so you can let out any steam as it's baking and it won't puff up as much. And we're gonna bake this for maybe 10 to 15 minutes in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, just until it starts to cook a little bit on top and gets a little bit golden. Okay, so while the crust is baking, we can work on the filling. And for the ingredients for the filling, we're using about 4 ounces of cream cheese, 1 can of pumpkin. We're gonna use 1 whole egg as well as 1 egg yolk, about 1/2 cup of light brown sugar, pumpkin pie spice, this is about maybe 2 teaspoons, and then we're gonna do about 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract as well as a little bit of kosher salt. So to start, we're gonna add our cream cheese and our pumpkin to a bowl. So I'm going to just mix this together with a hand mixer for just a minute or 2. And the cream cheese is softened when I'm doing this, so you wanna make sure that you pull it out of the fridge ahead of time, otherwise it'll be really, really hard to mix with a mixer. The next thing that we're gonna add is the brown sugar. And I'll go ahead and add the spices as well. This is about, I'm gonna measure this, I think it's about 2 teaspoons. And then salt, we'll do about a pinch. Okay, so the next thing is our eggs. So again, we're gonna do 1 whole egg plus 1 egg yolk. And the egg yolk is really gonna give the cake a nice rich texture, while the whole egg with the egg white is gonna help the pumpkin pie to rise a little bit and fluff up. Okay, and then we'll also add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then we'll mix this up one final time. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna scrape down the sides, and everything should be very, very smooth. Should be quite liquidy as well. Okay, so the pie crust has just come out of the oven. I let it cool for just a few minutes, and we're going to pour in the filling over the pie. So now it's gonna bake one more time in the oven, probably about 30 minutes or so until it's completely set, almost like a custard. And I'm keeping this again at 350. Okay, so we just took the pie out of the oven and it has cooled off for about 10 to 15 minutes. To check for the doneness of the pie, you just want to make sure that everything is set and that if you sort of shake the pan, it doesn't jiggle too much in the middle. So this looks pretty good. It has a nice custard-like consistency. So the final touch that we're going to do on the pumpkin pie is I'm going to just add some walnuts around the top of the pie and decorate it. And here you could also use whipped cream if you wanted to as well, and also is a nice indicator that, hey, there's walnuts in the crust. So I do recommend that you put this in the fridge before you serve it, just so that it completely sets. Leave it in the fridge for a couple of hours and then take it out just before serving and slicing the pie. So that's it. That is our olive oil pumpkin pie. If you do try this recipe, please let us know what you think in the comments below. And also note that you can find the full recipe with the ingredients and the instructions using the link below. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful holiday and we will see you next time. Ciao.